Hello everyone, I'm Aaron, a birding naturalist. Welcome back to my channel. What is biodiversity and why is it important? Well, so glad you asked. I recently took a trip to San Francisco where I visited the California Academy of Sciences. And I thought, gosh, with all the amazing animals and plants on display there, what a great time to talk about biodiversity. So while we enjoy some views of some of the things that are on display at the Cal Academy of Sciences, let's talk about biodiversity. So what is biodiversity? Biodiversity is kind of like the name says, bio, life, diversity, differences. It is all the different types of life, different forms of life in a given area. So you can talk about biodiversity of a state, like biodiversity of California. How many species total? Animals, plants, fungi, protists, like total number of species are there in the state of California. You can talk about them in a region, like a bio region, for example, a rainforest. How many species, plants, animals, fungi, everything, are there in a rainforest? You can talk about biodiversity of the Earth. How many species are there on planet Earth? So that's what biodiversity is. Why it's important is because of a lot of reasons. We humans are a part of this earth. We are part of the biodiversity. We are one member as species of the biodiversity of planet Earth. And as is true with every species on planet Earth, every component of biodiversity, we're all kind of linked. We're all connected to each other. Humans are connected to the life of the planet. And as a result of that, as a result of all those connections, biodiversity is actually rather important to us for a bunch of reasons. Some of those are kind of more tangible, measurable, extrinsic things. Some of those are more sort of soft, less quantifiable things, but they're all really important. So let's talk about some of those more tangible ways, more quantifiable ways that biodiversity is important to us and benefits us humans first. One is through medicine. We humans have gone out into the world, looked at all the species that are out there, and found lots of chemicals that we can use as medicines. So derived from the various different animals, plants, fungi out there in the world. One example is a soil bacteria that was found in France, a soil sample in France that had a compound in it that is now used to help treat tuberculosis. So like that's a chemical that this bacteria secreted because of its own evolutionary history that sort of almost coincidentally, we figured out, hey, that's a useful thing for human health. Gila monsters, which are a large lizard that are found in the southern United States, southwestern United States, and Mexico, have a compound that is useful in treating type 2 diabetes. So again, like this is a compound that this lizard, through its own evolutionary history, developed, creates as part of its natural life cycles, and it turns out has a benefit to us humans. And we're always finding new examples of this. There's a plant called water hyssop that's native to Southeast Asia. And there are some compounds in it that are being worked on right now that may very well help prevent sort of cognitive decline as we humans get older. So kind of protect brain function. So this is an emerging thing. And it's a great example of how we're always finding new stuff. And so as species go extinct, we unfortunately lose access to all those chemicals, all those compounds that are only created by maybe that particular species. And it's hard to impossible to predict exactly which species is going to have the compounds that are useful to us. So just kind of as almost a precautionary principle, a safety measure, it seems a good idea to protect everything and then figure out which ones are going to help save human lives. Another tangible thing that biodiversity does for humans is in terms of agriculture. So for one thing, there are tons of species out there that we can eat. Lots of plants and animals on the planet that could be human foods. We currently utilize a very small percentage of the possible food sources that are out there. And so by preserving biodiversity, we keep the options open to explore all these other ways of feeding our own species, the human population on this planet. And then beyond that, insects that pollinate our foods are wildly useful. If we lost all the pollinators, that would be devastating to the food industry. There are also lots of insects out there that are predators or parasites on species that we consider pests. So for example, when aphid infestations take over an area, that's very bad for the crops that we then want to eat. But ladybugs, which are a type of beetle, eat aphids. And so by coming in and eating those aphids, they're helping us quite a bit. And so if we lost the ladybug, we would have to deal with aphid infestations in an entirely different way, and it would be much more burdensome on us. So, and that's just one example of many, many, many such examples of species in the wild, out in the world, doing stuff to combat species that we view as pests and that damage our food sources. So again, a wonderful service, a wonderful benefit that we get from having all these kinds of different animals and critters out in the world as an intact biosphere. Another very, very tangible benefit that we humans get is in the terms of our economy. Looking at organisms, going around, being able to actually see stuff, actually generates a lot of money for us humans. Ecotourism is what it's often called. So the ability to go and tour areas and see the ecologies that are there is big business. It generates something like $55 billion, that's billion with a B, a year globally. And in fact, about 2 billion of that is just from people going around looking for whales. And that's just like one example. Whale watching generates $2 billion a year globally. That's a lot of money. That's big business. That's people's livelihoods. That's people's jobs and passions. And it helps kind of, again, drive home the importance of these biodiverse areas and why biodiversity is important. If whales went extinct, there would be no whale watching. And so that $2 billion industry would disappear. And then there are sort of the less tangible reasons why biodiversity is important. I mean, I think a sort of moral ethical argument can be made for preserving landscapes simply for the intrinsic value that those landscapes have. Having forests be forests, having rivers be rivers, having mountains be mountains. And all of the life that goes along with those areas has value kind of in its own right. These are organisms that have been pursuing livelihoods for their entire lives and represent lineages that have been evolving for billions of years now. And to allow that process to keep on going, I think has a moral imperative for us. There's also the sort of inspiring qualities of biodiverse areas, walking into a forest and thinking about the writing, the poetry, the music, the art that has been generated as a result of humans connecting with this amazing, beautiful and biodiverse world, I think there's a lot of value there to us as a species, to our societies. There are also things like mental health that have been shown to greatly improve when we spend time in green areas, in nature areas, and the wilder and sort of more diverse and more functional an ecosystem we can spend time in, it seems the better it is for our mental health. So there's a lot of other reasons beyond the sort of number crunching side of things that also reinforce why biodiversity is important to us humans. Unfortunately, with practices of habitat destruction and climate change, we are losing a lot of species. In fact, we're losing something like 150 species a day, which, to be slightly depressing, means that kind of over the course of watching this video, one species has gone extinct. And that means that that species and all of the unique biochemical characteristics, all the unique behaviors, all the unique things that make it its own species are lost to us. Maybe it's got an incredible cancer-fighting drug that it secretes as part of its own system. We'll never know because that species is gone. And that's happening every single day as we go along here. And that is why when it comes to our lives and our decisions that we make today, biodiversity matters, and protecting that biodiversity is important. I've made a few videos recently about things like delta smelt or spotted owls and the conflicts that are surrounding those species and how they're getting rare and the threats that they're facing and stuff like that. And one thing that does often kind of come up is, well, delta smelt, it's one species of fish. The spotted owl, it's one species of bird. What does it matter? Maybe they go extinct. Maybe we should just let them. Why all the fuss and bother? And the fuss and bother is because biodiversity is made up of a collection of individual species. Like, that's what biodiversity is. It's the number of species in an area. If that number goes down, if you have species that go extinct, you lose biodiversity and you damage, you impoverish all those benefits that we've just talked about. And so it behooves us, just as sort of a self-preservation thing, to keep as many species alive as we possibly can. And so that is why it is worth all the fuss and bother to keep delta smelt alive, to keep the spotted owl alive, to take steps to make sure that those species and those lineages have whatever they need to keep on going into the future. So there's a little bit about what biodiversity is, about why it's important, and why it matters to us, the impacts it's having on us today, and how the decisions that we make today maybe affect biodiversity and what we might want to think about as we're making those decisions. As always, thank you very much for the view. Until next time, enjoy the natural world.